Winter meetings have ended, and if this week is any indication of the future, then the Detroit Tigers may not have a very exciting offseason.
You are Locked On Tigers, your daily Detroit Tigers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Tigers. I'm, of course, your host, Scott Bentley. Today is Friday, December 12th, 2025. Thank you so much for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off of your first purchase. Welcome in, everyone. Welcome all. Today is Friday. It's 12/12 as well. It is Friday, and hopefully we'll send you off into the weekend here with a nice show. I want to take an episode to recap the week that was. Not very busy in Tigers world, but certainly a lot of moves happening around baseball during winter meetings as usual. And then I want to preface the rest of the offseason, right? There is the beautiful thing about winter meetings is even if there is not a lot happening for your team, there's at least like conversations begin on during this week with agents or other teams, etc. So I want to take this opportunity to kind of talk about what the rest of the offseason may look like for the Detroit Tigers as well. So we'll talk a lot about that. Obviously, that means we'll talk about the odds of a Skubal trade. We will talk about some news and notes from around the league at the end of the show as well. Old friend Akil Badu gets a major league contract. Let's start off with a winter meetings recap, however. From the Tigers' perspective, straight up, just not a whole lot. So far in the entire offseason, the Tigers have signed Kyle Finnegan, Drew Anderson, Gleyber Torres at the major league level, and that's obviously Gleyber was a qualifying offer. Those are the major league additions. They lose RJ Pettit. That's not a major league loss, but an organizational loss, and he is going to play Major League Baseball for a team that is not yours. The Tigers don't get anybody in the Rule 5 draft. That's totally fine, whatever. Probably a good thing that the roster is good enough where we are, not trying to find additions on the Rule 5. Ultimately, this was a pretty uneventful week. I think that kind of goes without saying. It wasn't. That doesn't mean it's inherently bad, though. Gleyber, obviously, that was before this week. That addition, the qualifying offer, but like Gleyber is a good ball player, when healthy, and is a great addition to this lineup. Kyle Finnegan is a good add to the bullpen. Was great for the Tigers down the stretch, and you have him for the next 2 years, presumably. And Anderson, even in a vacuum, I know a lot of people are kind of clowning on it. Even in a vacuum, I don't dislike it. Like I think the stuff is actually pretty good. And at worst, he'll be a middle innings, multi-inning reliever that goes out there and throws like the 5th and 6th innings or something. You can do a lot worse than what they've done. The issue that I have isn't what they have done. It's what they have not done. They've signed 3 guys, 2 of which were literally already on the team last year. The only addition that was not on the roster when the Tigers were eliminated was Drew Anderson, who's been in the KBO. So it's just this weird line to walk of, you got to remind yourself the offseason, for all intents and purposes, still has a long way to go, right? There is still plenty of time and opportunity to improve this roster. Like, truly, there is. And the moves that have been made, I can only speak for myself here. I'm not trying to put words in the fan base's mouth, but aren't catastrophic garbage moves. They're not bad decisions. There's solid upside to all of them, obviously within the context of like what they're each being paid, right? Like there's upside with all of them. In a vacuum, all fine. The other side of this line that I'm metaphorically walking is that I have said these exact words for going on 4 calendar years in a row. Legitimately. If you're a longtime listener to this show, I have regurgitated that word salad that I just gave you like 6 different times in 4 years, it feels like. I said the same thing pretty much every winter since Harris took over. And every trade deadline except the Erod fiasco. That one I just straight up said the front office fumbled it really poorly and there was really no redeeming qualities. I guess even then, like the Lorenzen trade was good. But that still, like that deadline was a failure. So it's just a continuation, if you will, of, okay, there's a lot of moves that the Tigers front office make that are fine moves that you look at and you go, okay, I can kind of see the upside here. But then when you zoom out and you look at the entire offseason as a whole, or you look at the entire last 12 months worth of additions as a whole, or whatever you want to, however far you want to zoom out, you go, wow, I don't know how much better the team really got via external additions. So what questions were answered during the week of winter meetings? I think that's an important thing to highlight because if you know what questions have been answered, then you know, obviously, as well, which ones haven't. And that kind of paints a picture of what the rest of the offseason, hopefully, looks like. I think I want to start with something that I believe was answered. And that is there was an acknowledgement that pitching needed to improve. That was backed by 2 pitching signings at the major league level, as well as comments and quotes directly from the front office and from Scott Harris saying that they wanted to add more pitching. Now, to what extent, we will see. I think that is for a lot of people, and myself included, the frustration with those kind of comments. I'm not convinced that there's a lot more reinforcements coming. It just, at least higher profile reinforcements. It sounds like, oh, we want to add pitching, but those are probably going to be waiver wire claims or, minor league contracts with invites to spring training, which we actually have one of those to talk about literally on this show at the end. So it's a double-edged sword. It's acknowledgement that the pitching needs to improve, and it does sound like, at a minimum, some other bullpen arms, will be added to the organization. They may just not be, $5+ million AAV, like legitimate high-end starting or relievers rather. So I can at least be glad that there's an understanding that pitching needs to improve, especially on the bullpen side. I think in the same breath, we also got an answer about the rotation. And I want to talk about that a little bit more in depth right after this. First, though, going to talk to y'all about our friends over at Game Time. The World Cup is finally coming back to North America for the first time since 1994, and with 48 teams for the first time ever, it is going to be absolutely massive. But let's be honest, getting tickets, well, that's usually the hardest part, right? That's why Game Time is clutch. The app finally gives fans the real advantage when it comes to snagging seats. With Game Time, you can track price drops in real time, get alerts when great seats open, and buy tickets the moment they hit the app. It puts the power back in your hands and makes going to the World Cup realistic instead of completely impossible. Pull up the app. The layout makes it so simple to scroll through matchups and compare seat views. Pick a game, tap a section, and have your tickets loaded within minutes. No confusion, no hunting for fine print. It's amazing. The price you see is actually the price you pay. So take the guesswork out of buying World Cup tickets and every match, concert, or event with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download the app, make an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Game Time. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Segment 2 of Locked On Tigers. Appreciate you all so much for tuning in, making us your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. And we will, of course, be back on Monday recapping the weekend, if any news or notes come out of the weekend, and then obviously continuing our off-season conversations as we always do. So thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. You already live your team every day. Now take it up a level and go ad-free. You can join the Everydayer Club and get Locked On Tigers with no interruptions, members-only Discord access, and more, all for just $5 a month or $50 a year. So go to lockedonpodcast.com/Everydayer Club, and you can look in the show notes of this show and subscribe today. It's super cool, very fun new initiative we have going on here at Locked On. Today, we talk about the end of winter meetings and what the rest of the offseason may or may not look like for the Detroit Tigers. Talking about some questions that were answered or not answered in winter meetings for the Detroit Tigers. Talked about the bullpen before the break. In terms of starting pitching, I think we got an answer, and I just don't like the answer very much. But I think if I'm honest with myself, we did kind of get, some writing on the wall about the rotation the rest of the winter, and that this is probably it. If there is more, again, gonna just broken record this, it's probably going to be minor league deals with invites to spring training or low end, guys that can be relievers. If, other people are better, more like depth options, right? Cater Montero type of starters. I think that we're going to go into opening day with a rotation of Skubal. We'll talk about him obviously a little bit later. Olsen, Flaherty, Mize, Melton / Drew Anderson. And it's just going to be, have fun. What we don't have an answer on is the offense. I guess, honestly, maybe we did, and maybe I'm in denial, because we did get somewhat of an answer about the additions of bats and how they would look to add, but most of the increase in production from the offense in 2026 is going to come via development and come from within. I hate it. I hate that. I don't expect a lot more to be added. I think they'll hang around and kick the tires with Bregman and see what his market is, but they won't go all out on him. I think that they are content with Torque and Gleyber on the right side of the infield, with Baez / McKinstry as a platoon at shortstop, with Colt Keith and friends, we'll call it, at third base. Riley Greene in one corner, Parker early in the season in center, Max Clark later in the season in center if Parker struggles, Carpenter in right field. I guess you can do Carpenter and friends for right field as well. Matt Vierling back in the mix, corner outfield / third base as a righty. Hao-Yu Lee is the new Andy Ibanez role on the team. And I think that I really think that that's it. And they're going to hope that they see steps forward in development and progression, specifically from Colt Keith, Riley Greene, and Parker Meadows. Because there is still untapped potential in all three of those guys. I'm not telling you the answer I want. Don't shoot the messenger. I still think they should add a third baseman and a right-handed hitting corner outfielder. It's been on my wish list all offseason. I don't need a complete overhaul of offense. That's not feasible in one offseason. But I also would like really a lot more than, literally nothing. Now, the biggest question that still remains the remainder of the offseason is a fairly obvious one, unless you've been living under a rock, and that is, what is the status of a Tarik Skubal trade? There's more and more rumors every day with this, as there's going to be. My opinion hasn't changed in 24 hours. I kind of told you where I stood yesterday. I don't buy much into anything we're hearing right now. I need to see a lot more smoke and evidence that this is actually, there's momentum. I don't know, being created towards that or heading in that direction before I start buying into it. There's always going to be, people that are like, oh, like this is going to happen, or, oh, like, we're hearing this, whatever. There are a few more national pundits, I guess, that are saying that they think Skubal ultimately gets traded, but that's more than a few weeks ago. But there's also still a handful that say that it is absolutely not happening. My stance has not changed because there's an underlying question I have about his actual trade market. And this is something that's been brought up by a handful of other people, and I think it's a good point, and I'll kind of add some of my individual opinions within it. But no one is going to give up their entire farm system for Tarik Skubal without a belief that they can extend him once the trade is done. It would be, I think he's the best pitcher breathing oxygen right now. I still think that it would be silly to spend the amount of prospect capital and asset capital that it would take, and that would be required for Scott Harris, who we know is a stingy trader, to pull the trigger on a Tarik Skubal type deal and then let him walk in 12 months. That would be foolish for most organizations. There's only a couple that you could even remotely justify that for. So you're really only looking at the teams that are willing to spend $300 to $400 million on one player. Right? Like, you're going to give up a Juan Soto-esque return first time, not second time, because he had multiple years left of team control. You're going to give up that big of a return and then just know that he's going to walk in a year? No, you want some sort of belief that you can bring him in long term. So that eliminates, weirdly, I feel like most of baseball in today's day and age. There's not a ton of teams that are willing to fork over $400 million on one player. But there are some, and that's why he'll get it. So it's just a weird situation where I don't know how big the trade market is. I think the teams that are interested will be very aggressive, and they understand they'd have to give up a lot. But I don't think there's like 25 teams lining up throwing offers at the Tigers for Skubal. And I also don't think that the Tigers have any intentions of making him a real, actual competitive contract offer in the next 12 months. I think they fully understand that he's gone. So I think, I guess we won't really have an answer, but I'm going to bet on nothing. I'm going to bet on nothing happening. And the Tigers just have a quiet offseason where they keep Tarik Skubal for 2026. He walks in a year. So what does the rest of the winter look like? Well, we can divide that into what I would like it to be versus what I actually think it will look like. And we'll do that right after this. First, though, got to talk to y'all about our friends over at FanDuel. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift. NFL Sundays move very fast, one big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. It's so fun. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. A receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump into the moment. Live spreads and money lines adjust instantly. There's player props. As guys heat up, you can bet on touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and so much more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, and every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. All right, everybody, welcome back. Your third and final segment of Locked On Tigers. Appreciate y'all for tuning in, as always. So what does the rest of the winter look like? We can keep this relatively short and sweet. I would like it to look like another starting pitcher, multiple relievers, and 2 bats. Preferably right-handers that can play corner infield and corner outfield. What do I think the rest of the offseason looks like? Well, I think it's probably a lot of what we've seen so far. Players between the margins, smaller moves to improve depth, no moves that you look at and you scoff at and go, wow, that's such a stupid use of money. That's so dumb. But no moves that are going to move the needle a ton when you zoom out on the offseason as a whole when pitchers and catchers report in a couple of months. That's really all I got. We'll see. 10 times out of 10, 11 times out of 10 would rather be wrong and have it benefit the Detroit Tigers. I do not carry around a need to be right. I am wrong all the time. And that's the beautiful thing with baseball and with sports in general. Is that they do play the games for a reason. And I hope so badly that they are going to be more aggressive at some point with this current roster. Because I do believe in the future of this organization. I do not think that the players that are currently within the Tigers organization, it is impossible to win with them. I don't believe that. I think that it is. But you have to time the reinforcements correctly too. We have seen so many rebuilds over the last 25 years that a team bottoms out, they hoard a bunch of good young players, they go on the upswing, and then they never get over that hump to become truly a title contender. It happens all the effing time in every sport. You've probably thought of 3 or 4 examples already, just as I'm explaining the scenario in your lifetime. The reason why is because it's the hardest step. If there was an exact formula, every team would just do that and be really good at some point. Anybody can suck, dude. Anyone. Anybody can drive a team into the ground and have it lose more games than any team in its respective sport, and then get a high draft pick and trade away professional high-end talent for minor league talent, whatever. Anyone can do that. Winning is hard. And you got to make the right moves at the right time. And it's a very difficult job. And that is why the people that do it get paid a lot of money. And I hope that the Detroit Tigers are not going to be another team that people in 30 years go, man, what if? And they take advantage while they still have a competitive window, which I don't think is closing. They're very young. And they have arguably the best prospect in baseball. He hasn't even played a major league game yet. There's more talent coming too, and that's very exciting. We'll see what the rest of the winter looks like. Some other news and notes from around the league. Akil Badu signs a major league deal with the Milwaukee Brewers. Awesome stuff. I'm so happy for Akil Badu, and I really hope that he figures it out and has a good, solid season. I will always root for that man. I don't even care where he could play for anybody. I don't care. I will always be a fan, and yeah, I wish him the best of luck in Milwaukee. The Tigers re-signed Matt Seelinger to a minor league deal with an invite to spring training. Had really good AA and AAA numbers a year ago in the Tigers organization. Obviously re-signed. He's a right-handed reliever. Has a fastball that's in the low 90s. You know, the big thing with him is the knuckle puck or whatever he calls it. It's, you know, there's it's like a curveball and a splitter, and I think there's another pitch thrown in there that he like technically says it's a variation of. It's a very unique pitch in terms of its spin and movement, and might be something fun to keep around in the organization. So we'll see how he does. Robert Suarez to the Braves. Really interesting move because he got paid. However, they also immediately announced that Raisel Iglesias would still be the closer. And they also signed Mike Yastrzemski, who's had a kind of roller coaster of a year as a career rather as a platoon bat, has had some really good years, some not so really good years. So we'll see. I think that Braves core is like still in my head too good to fail. So we'll see what happens with them. But they go out and get some bullpen help. Also bullpen help. The Athletics get Mark Leiter Jr. Good ad for them. I actually like that a lot. Also, the Cubs getting Holby Milner, I think, is one of the more under the radar, lefty options that were in the free agent market this year. So I kind of like that for them. He also has a lot of experience with that coaching staff when it was in Milwaukee. And then Lane Thomas to the Royals kind of terrifies me. Like Lane Thomas has tools. It's just a matter of putting it all together. He had a terrible year this year, so he certainly did not. But a guy that has had like almost a 30 home run season, I think 27, 28 homers at one point, also has had an over 30 stolen base season, has had an OPS in the mid high 700s, like doesn't expand the strike zone very much. So we'll see. I mean, maybe it's just like gone and he's just going to be a, 530 or 560 OPS guy like he was in 2025. But him staying in the division, obviously had some good years with Cleveland. Not exactly the best news that I want to hear, that because he's obviously burned the Tigers before. Okay, I think that's it. Thanks for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. We, of course, will be back on Monday, recapping the weekend, starting to look ahead at some more important dates for the offseason, etc. I appreciate you all so much for tuning in. As always, peace and love. Going to therapy's dope. I'll catch you on Monday, baby. Go Tigers.